I'm Katie Kempner, and welcome to Perspectives here at Advertising Week. Perspectives is a series of inspiring conversations with remarkable working women who are leading busy and successful lives. And it's my pleasure, my very first guest, no pressure, for this conference to talk to Liz Jones, CEO, B2B, Dentsu Aegis. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I think we should start by talking about what you're going to talk about here today, because it's exactly in the realm of perspectives.
Sure. So I've a roundtable event on Thursday with 4 very exciting female leaders in our industry who are going to talk about the challenges they've faced in their careers, both as women and also potentially as mothers as well.
And I think there's been so much conversation now around women in the workplace, but I still think the idea of how you sort of balance everything, especially when you have kids, but certainly not only when you have kids, is still something that most people haven't cracked. And that's something you focus on, one of the things.
Yeah, it's so I'm also the executive sponsor for diversity and inclusion at Dentsu Aegis Network. It's something we take quite seriously. I think the word balance is a complete misnomer. There is no balance.
A lot of people don't like that word.
No, it doesn't. It's not a balanced life. But as I was just saying to you, I feel it's kind of like a bank account. So some weeks, Dentsu Aegis Network will get more than their fair share of Liz Jones, and then the next week maybe I'll think about trying to redress that and give a bit back to my family and making sure I am home for bath time. But it's, to call it balance is, I think balance is making people strive for something that is very difficult to really achieve on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, well, maybe you have to. I think that's a very interesting point about, a bank account of some weeks you're doing it one way and some weeks you're doing it another way. One of the things you and I had just started talking about in terms of when you have had kids, you were already pretty high up in your career. Do you think that concept of a bank account is more difficult when you're younger in your career?
I do think it's harder. I think it's literally financially harder to manage when you're younger, if you've also got to juggle childcare. And obviously the more money you can spend on childcare, the more flexibility you will have to be able to do the things you need to do. And if that's early starts and late finishes, then more money gives you a bit more room for manoeuvre. And I think it was also easier for me coming back having had a child in my 40s, because I was just very aware, I had more confidence in what I was able to contribute, and I'm lucky enough to be in a company where you are judged on your outcomes. So the when, where, and how I do my job is not something I'm questioned on. The business will judge me on my actual performance and not when I'm doing that.
That brings up an excellent point, because in a lot of companies still, it's the optics of when you're there and how much time you're putting in at the office, and if you're leaving to take your child to a doctor's appointment, it's noticed.
I think presenteeism is a really hard legacy issue in our industry, and I think actually some of the bigger new brands that have come into our world, the American, the more technology-based brands, the Googles, the Facebooks, etc., are showing us a different way of working, and that you can still have a high-performing team, but they don't necessarily have to be behind their desk the whole time. What is a desk anymore? I heard an awful story about a woman who just felt that she had to leave her coat on her chair, even if she had left the office to go to a sports day or whatever, but she left her coat there so that the image was that she was still at her desk. And I think we need to, we all need to strive for whatever person you are, man, woman, carer or not, to have more ability to work differently and be judged on your outcomes.
Yeah, and it's true, because people are, during this conference and at so many others, advertising executives are talking about what are we going to do because we're losing the best talent. They're going to tech companies, and they're going to all the, I would say tech companies are the biggest threat, but other places are not coming into advertising anymore. And I think that this is a really big part of it. For men too, though, as parents, or and just wanting to have a life and not having to be, just present so people see your face all day.
Yeah, we need more role models, male and female. We need more men to stand up and without shame saying, I'm leaving now because I'm going to pick my child up, or I'm going to the Carol concert, or whatever it is. Because then I think it gives people the permission. It makes them realize that this is acceptable. In fact, it's endorsed, and it's a positive thing that you have a life outside of your work.
So you had mentioned something that I'd love to talk about in terms of working women and mothers not choosing to take a 4-day week. And now this is not a U.S. thing. I've never. Could you explain?
Yeah, a lot of women in the UK would perhaps have a child and then think, I want to come back 4 days a week, because I think that day will prevent the guilt or assuage to some level the guilt I will have at being a bad mum or a bad employee. And I try and say to women, don't do that. It's a 20% tax. You will just cram a 5-day week into 4 days, and you will be paid 20% less. All of your reward will go down by 20%, the holiday, all of the things that you hold dear, and you will just end up working harder and probably still picking up emails on that 5th day. So look for ways to create more flexibility around your week. I work from home. I try and work from home 1 day a week, and that for me gives me a bit of space, because it means I'm not commuting, but I can be sat in our office, online at 8 o'clock in the morning, but I can also put a wash on or pick up my little boy from nursery and be that mum at the gate.
So in terms of your own life then, one of the, you said you had your son later on, and which I actually think, looking back, I was in my 20s, I was just starting at Crispin Porter Bogusky. I got my job, found out I was having a baby, and there was never any stopping, so I guess it wasn't a very mindful way of doing anything. It sounds like you took a much more mindful approach.
I don't know, it just took a lot longer.
But are there any tips that you could share with us from your own life?
I think for me, because I'd worked for nearly 20 years before I had my son, there was never any doubt that I wasn't going to come back, because that's who I am. And I think it's really important that he sees me as a role model, as a working mum, although the language around this does drive me insane, because my husband is never asked if he is a working dad. But so for me, it was going to be important for me to still be authentic and to be the best mum I knew. In order to be the best mum, I knew I needed to come back to work and have my own purpose, which was my professional career.
So just to sort of wrap up, is there any advice, in the advice vein, is there any advice that has helped guide you through your career that you could share with everyone here at Advertising Week today?
So I'll give you one piece of advice, which is, often in a meeting, there'll be a task, or there'll be something that needs doing, and you'll see everyone looking around the room thinking, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this task, I don't want to do it. And then often a woman, and often I will have said, I'll do it. So if you're gonna do that, then make sure you take ownership of it and say, I will take on that task and I will do it, and I will do it really well. Don't do it as a throwaway, I'll do it. Because then you sort of perpetuate the kind of more sort of, the fact it's a sort of bit of a grim task that nobody wanted.
So take ownership and credit. Yeah. Well, thank you. This was a terrific way to start. Thanks for joining us.
Lovely to meet you.
Thank you.